Hey everybody, it's Tiffany from Barista Lab, and we're back with a second round of videos. The first video was basically a sales pitch for Baratza. No, I'm just kidding. It was like why I love Baratza grinders so much, and we're still just really getting into that. So we're gonna dig a little bit deeper on these grinders here. I have before me mostly like the full line. But there are 3 different versions of the sette. There are a couple different versions of the Vario W, and there's another version of the Forte. However, I have these here because these are the grinders that I would choose if I had the option. Let me get back to that. Hang on. Yes, I do have notes, and I will look at them. Thank you very much. This video is more about like how do you choose a Baratza grinder. I know there are so many different videos out there that kind of tell you the same thing, but we're going to do it a little bit different here because we're Barista Lab and we keep it real. So it comes down to what kind of coffee drinker are you and what do you value most? For example, if you only drink brewed coffee and maybe you have like a couple different brewing methods, but maybe you just only use one of them, like let's say you're a Chemex person. Like, I think you'll be pretty fine with the Encore, honestly. Now, let's say you drink the full range of coffee. You have like a coffee lab in your house. You have the espresso machine, and you have the cold brewers, and you have the AeroPress, and you also have that other AeroPress looking item, but it's more of like a percolator. Don't remember the name of it, but let's say you just love to like experiment, and one day you're feeling like an espresso and the next day you're feeling like having a whole pot of coffee. I would say if you're going for versatility, you're probably going to want to go with the Forte. And so that's what I'm kind of telling you based off of what you drink and what you value. So simplicity and one brewing method. You always have filter coffee. I would say go with Encore. Versatility, you want the entire range. You don't know what you're going to drink on a certain day, go with a Forte. Now, let's get in here in this middle section. I would say if you have an espresso machine and you use it occasionally, and you drink anything in between espresso and pour over, I would say you're probably going to want to get one of these two, the sette or the vario. And that is because these two don't really go coarse enough for French press or cold brew, but they'll do anything finer than that. Now, this Virtuoso Plus is very similar to the Encore in terms of like what you would use it for. The only major difference is that it comes with this timer here. Personally, probably wouldn't use a timed. As you can see, I have the weighted versions of the machines here. So I'm not really like a time brewer, but let's say you just wanted a little step up from the Encore, then I would, like a little bit more fancy, I would go with the Virtuoso Plus. Okay, the main difference is these don't do espresso, and these do, if you want to cut it into something really, really super easy to define. Another way to pick a grinder is like, okay, what looks best in my kitchen? Because probably you're going to keep this on your counter. And also, the other way to pick a grinder might be like, what would make my friends the most jealous? Like, what is the most badass looking grinder? My friends are going to be so jealous when they come over, right? Okay, anyways. Also, just to recap, I would say this is the most versatile. If you have everything under the sun in terms of brewers, you want to probably go with this Forte. If I'm not a press pot person, I'm also not a cold brew person, I would say my pick of the litter is the sette. The other thing is almost everything in the coffee industry is based off of weight, which is why I've chosen the weighted grinders. I'm also a minimalist. So like to take one step out of my coffee brewing process is to become a minimalist. So I would go with the weighted grinders. Espresso golden ratio is done by weight. Everything is done by starting weight and then like finished beverage weight. And then the whole time thing is usually in the brew cycle. So let's say this grinder, the Virtuoso Plus, has a timer, but it's really just to, I would still use a scale. Let's say if you're brewing Chemex, you're brewing like about 30 grams of coffee. The timer would be like, you time it based on how much weight will come out. So you eliminate a step by basically getting a weighted grinder or one with a scale. I think they're awesome to have a scale, and I would totally go that route. If you're brewing espresso, like for one of these grinders, let's say you brew a lot of espresso, or maybe like you love espresso, but your partner really likes coffee. I would probably go with one of these, either the Forte or the Sette. I'll tell you why. It's because coffee shop trained. So usually if you're brewing espresso or dialing in espresso, you would dial it in with weight on top. And you would always top off your hopper with more beans, because the way that the grinder is dialed in is with that weight on top. And if it gets too low, the espresso coming out, the coffee coming out is going to change. And so it's really awesome to have this open and close valve, because if you did dial in your coffee with a lot of grounds with a lot of beans on top, you can close it, take it off, and then dump your beans to put them back in the bag. That's great. I don't know how many people are drinking like several espressos a day though, but it's also nice because if you were to have a lot of coffee beans in the Encore, the Virtuoso, or the Vario, you would have to dump it out back into the bag, and sometimes that can be not so graceful. The other thing that I wanted to mention, usually if I'm making coffee, and I'll tell you again, I'm a filter coffee drinker, I just grind as much coffee as I need for that brew. For the hoppers that don't have this close open valve, it doesn't really matter to me, because I'm only grinding enough coffee for the type of brew that I need. So I will leave this I would leave these mainly empty, and I would just, turn the grinder on and pour my 30 grams of coffee in the grinder and be done with it. So I really do think these open and close valves are best for espresso. And the reason, again, is because when you're dialing an espresso, it can take a long time sometimes. Okay, so there you go. That's how you narrow it down and choose the Baratza grinder that is right for you. You can use that instruction for any grinder, but Baratza definitely is my favorite for the prosumer. And thanks for watching. Again, if you tune in to the next video, because we're going to go over the most important questions to ask. And yeah, thanks for watching.